Hi, I'm Hannah.
Hi, I'm Abby.
And this is Spilling Ink,
the Ink Spill podcast.
We are on season 2, episode 4.
Yeah, basically the end.
Basically the end.
I mean, no. We have next week's episode will be our last one, but today is the last one with a guest. We're joined by the amazing Culain Wood.
We are.
Who is what a way to end season 2's guests.
I'm nervous. I don't know
You're
why.
nervous?
Well, yeah, because I don't know. I remember seeing Culain at Attic Stories, and I remember sitting there and thinking, you know, I am absolutely not taking any credit away from any of the poets and novelists we've listened to and spoken to so far. But I remember sitting there and be like, wow, this is how it's done. And I was a little bit in awe of him.
Well, it's different because you haven't seen Faye perform.
Yeah, true.
You haven't seen Rosa Reid. You haven't seen Adrian Reid. You've worked with Gareth, but I don't imagine Gareth is kind of performing the same way.
Yeah, no.
So for you, like, Culain is the act that you're just like, this is it. This is what I saw. And like, it was something we've both agreed on. Whereas a lot of the other guests we've either brought to each other and been like
introduced each other,
presented and been like, here, this person I would like.
So true. So yeah, really excited to speak to Culain today. But let's not skip ahead. Let's recap on what a fantastic week we had last week with Adrian.
Yeah, what a treat. Yeah. Like, this is the thing, is like every week, I don't want to say gets better, but maintains the same quality. Yeah. Like, we had a great time with Faye, our first guest, and she was just wonderful. And every guest we've had since then, it's just such a treat to sit there and enjoy. It's why we did it. Sounds really lame. It's why we did it. We want to sit there and talk to people about poetry and writing and literature.
Dream, isn't it? When you kind of think about the way that we spend our spare time, we just chat to these fantastic, super talented people and just get their opinions and ideas and just get to talk about poetry and literature. Yeah. It's
making us better every single time. Like,
it truly is. I'm learning so much. I don't know if you feel the same way. And
I imagine it's going to translate differently because it's stuff we'll definitely take to Ink Spill. But I imagine for you, the teacher, you're going to take stuff. And like, I'm not teaching, but as someone who's like writing bits, well, we're both right. Do you know what I mean? Like, you as a teacher will definitely inhabit this information differently.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm actually stealing a lot of the things that we're talking about and using them in my lessons.
Good.
I mean, sorry to kind of go back to season 1. I stole Rosa's I Remember, and I did that activity just for a little closing activity with my year 11s to really get them to think about a sense of place. And again, that was just really brilliant. Some of the things I came up with, to say they're only 15, 16, just so heartwarming. And, you know, again, I just think these are applicable to people and writers of all ages and abilities. So I really hope that you guys are finding this as useful and as interesting as we are recording it.
But if not, I'm glad it's useful for us.
Yeah, if not, and even if the listeners dwindle, it's just for me and Abby just to see each other and get
talk to nerdy things.
Yeah, nerd out over different poets and authors. But I mean, Adrian really did just shower us with wisdom, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah, it was such like just a really relaxing experience to just like really, I felt like at uni, but in the best way. I felt like I was listening to someone just really like with a really like gentle sense of authority. Like, it was never like
never patronising. No, it was just always really informative, and like I just feel like I learned a lot, and it was just really nice. And you know, Adrian's like part of my family now, and I'm just sat there. But it's also really nice to have talented family, you know. Oh God, yeah. No, definitely. And I know that last week you were kind of saying there's that nervous element of potentially inadequacy, feeling like you're a bit nervous to send him your work, but at the same time, what a tool to kind of have in your family. You know, I would use him. I would.
Oh my God, he's so generous with time, and like when we asked him, he was delighted, and I was just like, it's such a nice thing to have this thing that we're doing being appreciated by other people. It was just, I just feel like it's just an episode I know I'm gonna come back to and listen to, and like probably like genuinely part of my editing process of this will like not just this project but like my novel and other bits of work will be very useful for. So just such a treat. I think every week we're just like great time.
We're giddy, aren't we, afterwards? We're like, oh, it's so good. And...
Well, the thing is, often we finish sorry, doors just fell over. We finish every week, and we often like have your husband will call you and be like, are you coming home? And you're like, yeah, and then we have like a proper debrief about what we talked about and what we enjoyed, and like it's so nice that we can like actively reflect on it. And then often when our lovely editor Alex does the lovely edits, we often come back to stuff and take the time to actually listen to it. And like, you know, we listen to every episode like 5 times all the way through.
We're happy with it.
And Alex listens to it more, bless him, which is, I'm so glad I'm not editing it, because I think I get so sick of my own voice.
Oh God, I would as well.
Of my voice, thanks Hannah.
No, my voice is also in this. And Watson's antics.
Yeah, he just literally went.
Just had enough. But yeah, before we get ahead of ourselves and get excited, let's talk about our creative projects.
Yeah, well, we did a little bit of budging up this week, didn't we, on the back of our conversation last week? Because obviously one of the things that we set for one of the creative tasks was finding an accountability buddy.
Yes.
And on the back of that conversation, we were very much like, why do we not read each other's work? We talk to each other in a kind of professional capacity, if you will. But we never really send each other works in progress. So that was quite nice, actually, wasn't it?
Well, also we didn't want to bring anyone else in and have any more responsibility anywhere else. We were like, I know you're busy, you know I'm busy.
Yeah.
Let's, like, if we can't get to it, it's fine, but like at least then it's sort of in hand.
Yeah, as well, it was quite nice to, I mean, giving kind of written feedback can be quite tricky because it's hard to write exactly what you mean, whereas just being able to verbally say, okay, this, I really liked it, but this didn't quite work for me.
Yeah.
It's just
and we've got that trust. Like, if you said to me, I don't like this, and I could go, why? And you'd be like, this, I'd be like, oh my god, yeah, I never noticed that. But like, if someone had come out and been like, I don't like this, and I'm like, well, actually,
who's telling me?
And it was just not. It was just really fun, and I think something we've talked about just through feedback is like how different the work is from listening to each other talk about it to actually reading it.
Oh yeah. I thought you mean how different our work is kind of in terms of what we're producing, because again we are similar in so many ways but different in our writing, and I think that's a really good thing, isn't it? We can learn from each other, we can build upon each other as well. So
we're a nice like Venn diagram of good crossovers, but also we're quite different as like people and writers, and that it just worked great.
It does, yeah. So we kind of shared some feedback with each other. We won't kind of bore you with it on here because obviously you don't know our projects, you've not read.
It'd be very like read. I didn't like line 42.
It's like, don't you know what line 42 is? I bet this is really great listening. But yeah, we're just sharing that feedback and kind of again, if you are with someone you can trust, you can be a little bit more specific and maybe even a little bit more brutal, but more constructive.
No, but I liked it. It kind of. I'll let you talk about Killing Your Darlings because I knew that line made you sparkle last week.
I did like it.
But like I knew that when I handed over work, I wasn't there going, oh, and this isn't finished, and this is half a draft, and this is. I was just like, here it is. You know me. You know, we've worked together for like nearly 3 years.
Oh god, yeah, potentially. I mean, since COVID. So
since COVID, yeah,
we were creating
bits and pieces.
In 2021. So
2021. Nearly 3 years.
Gosh.
Flipping heck. That's insane. So I was just kind of relaxed, like handing it over, and like I was just like, whatever you can read, and like don't get fixated on like reading it all. Like,
it's so true what you've just said then, because I actually did send my novel to someone a good while ago, and it was someone I really respect and look up to. And I remember attaching the document to the email, and in the body of the email being like, it's not a finished product yet, it's still a work in progress. I'm really like trying to justify like why it was shit, and I was like, actually, I don't think this is shit, but I'm just nervous sending it to someone who I don't fully trust, actually, and not that I don't trust, but someone who I like really admire.
Well, also just like someone who hasn't, like, we've talked. I know a lot about your projects and what you've talked about, and like this was the first time reading it, but I was just sat there like, this is what she means when she talked about, like, I'm not pretending I remember everything you say because we talk about a lot of stuff.
Oh god, yeah.
But there's some moments where I was like, I remember we talked about this last summer when we were sat at Head of Steam, or like we're having a drink or something. So it's really interesting. But it was very nice not to have that buffer of just. I was just kind of like, here you go.
Yeah. I think so accountability buddies. We've tried it this week. We found it helpful, didn't we?
Yeah.
So again, try and find someone who will. Preferably another writer, but again, a friend or partner, somebody who you trust, to give you honest feedback. My sister's not a writer actually, and when I was doing my masters, I sent her my novel, and she gave me some really good feedback. She's an artist, so I guess she kind of comes at it from that creative lens, and she was really, really helpful in that process. So again, just a trusted person.
Yeah.
The other thing we set then was Kill Your Darlings, wasn't it?
Yes, and write draft 2, but we'll get to draft 2 in a sec.
Yeah,
because I don't think. We can both say we're not on draft 2 yet.
I'm not on draft 2. Draft 1 is still, happening. But it's a long process with a novel, so I'm definitely still kind of just nipping back to the beginning every now and then and rewriting certain bits.
Yeah, as you figure bits out. I think we just didn't want to keep giving out more editing stuff. And I think even putting draft 2 on people's... Even putting it on our, like...
Radar.
That's what I was looking for. I was going to say horizon. Looking up on our radar was nice because like, actually, this isn't the finish. I guess that's what it reminded me of, is like this drafting and this editing is not the finished piece, which so often is where my work ends. Like I edit and then I'm like, cool, it's done. And I think I really like the idea of actually I'm going to now lean into like redrafting, which feels much more creative and exciting, but leans into
killing your darlings. So please, and do you want to say anything about, did you kill any of your darlings? Metaphorically?
Well, not my metaphorical darlings. In the novel, I found it quite hard, actually, to be honest, because I kind of felt like every single piece I'd added now is an integral part of the story.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like for me to kill it, or to kill, like, these extra adjectives that I've maybe put in, I'm trying to be quite sparing as it is. So in actual fact, I didn't really feel I had that many darlings to kill in the novel. Some may disagree with me, again. Some people may read it and think, actually, there's loads that you can cut out here. But I personally didn't see any. Really enjoyed it though for poetry. I submitted some work to some different publishers this week. Nothing major, just to be featured in some collections that I've quite liked the look of. And I was going through kind of my archives, because I've been writing poetry for a really long time now, and I've forgotten about some of the poems I wrote at the very beginning of my career, and I thought to myself, let's just load them up, let me see, what's actually worth keeping and what actually have I outgrown now and am I not going to use. And I killed a few of my older darlings that I kind of thought, I think I'm better than this now. And it was quite nice, actually, to think I've grown a lot since I wrote this poem. And in actual fact, I'm not going to do anything with this now. So I didn't kill my darlings, because you've always shouted at me in the past for deleting things.
Yes.
I parked my darlings.
I
put them in a folder, and it's just an archive folder. That I may come back to in the future and improve them, but for now they're parked. They're not. I don't need them. I'm not going to need them anytime soon.
No, I love that. I think that's something that I really need to do, because I am... other than the stuff I've written for this, I haven't written any poetry for a while. I really... I was watching a TikTok about someone who said you need to, like, write every single day at the same time, because it trains your brain. Now, I think we can both hold our hands and say we do not have capacity for that, because our days are so different and so varied and so long that the idea of writing at the same time every day will just make me anxious. But I do think I think Rosa, back to season 1, mentioned, and I'm sure we'll do this in season 3, we'll start referencing season 2.
Yeah, we definitely
but Rosa in season 1 talked about the artist's way, which was like a sort of structure book to kind of help you figure out routines and patterns in your life. I believe I haven't. I think I've read it in the past, but I've had a lot of morphine and I can't trust my memory. Yeah. So I'm gonna reread it with fresh eyes. And I just bought the copy and it's on my bedside table, so I'm gonna try that and just, I think for me, CPR in my darlings.
CPR does. You can
just like
resuscitate them.
Yeah, maybe like not. Yeah, just like even ideas I haven't played with in a while. I'd quite like to. So yeah, but yeah, interesting week. Also, just like nice to reflect on, like being busy and just this is what we have the capacity for this week, but it's not always the way. So yeah,
shall we then move on to this week? Obviously, we mentioned that we've got the wonderful Culain Wood, haven't we? Joining us, and we can't wait for our conversation with him. I'm really excited to hear about his collection. Call it what it is.
Call it what you want.
Call it what you want. I am really excited to hear about that, because it's a collection that it's short, isn't it? It's only a brief one, so it'll be interesting to discuss his kind of process.
He's self-published as well, which is nice.
He is self-published. Yeah.
Shall I read his bio?
Yeah. Come on. Let's hear a little bit about Culain.
Culain on the massive iPad, because we always ask our guests for bios, and we share them on social media. But Culain's really resonated with us, because we like the structure. Culain Wood is a spoken word poet from Salford, described as one of the most exciting poets in the country by Punk in Drublic. Culain's poetry is full of integrity, humility and fragility. Quote from Glastonbury Festival, which I'm sure he will mention later. Culain lists Joe Strumner, David Attenborough and Eric Cantona as his inspirations, but he also writes for his daughters, so they will always know what he stood for and who he stood up to.
I love it.
It's such a... my bio is... I really need to rewrite my bio, because it's a bit dated, and I've been doing a bit of professional work. Professional in inverted commas. I've been doing some work recently where I've been using it, and I was just like, I need to update it. But I was just reading that, and I was just like, God, if I could steal that, I would, because it's such... That ending bit is just like...
It is, because it's personal, but it's also I just love it, the legacy that he hopes to leave behind. I just think is brilliant.
It's very clever and very reflective of who he is as a person.
And God, that name drop of Glastonbury Festival, I cannot wait to ask him about that. That's something we discovered in Attic Stories, that he was fresh from the Glastonbury stage, wasn't he?
He was, and I'm not going to preempt it, because we know what he's been up to. But I'll let him talk about that. So should we say hello?
Yeah, let's go chat to Culain.
Fab. So we're now joined by our third guest this season, Culain Wood, who is a poet who we met at Attic Stories at Lawrence Batley Theatre We were just saying nearly a year ago now, which is mad. So Culain, for those of us who don't know you, please could you introduce yourself, including your writing?
Yeah, absolutely. So hello everyone. My name's Culain Wood. I'm a poet / spoken word performer. Although I don't really like either one of those terms, but sometimes you need to use something to explain what you do when you stand up on a stage with a microphone. I've been sort of writing and performing, if you can call it performing, for sort of 4 or 5 years. Years ago, I was a singer in a punk band getting on for 10 years, from being sort of 17 all the way through to having kids. And I think what I'm doing now is just sort of probably doing what I was supposed to be doing then, mainly because that was just involved falling out with everybody around me and, in the band. Now I can just fall out with myself. In terms of, where you can find my poetry or my performances, there's some stuff on YouTube. And then I also have a sort of I don't want to say self-penned and self-published, because again, it sounds a bit cringy, but I basically made and drew a little book and stuck it together and got it printed up. And so, I usually have that with me at gigs, just so people have got something to take away, a little scrapbook type thing. But yeah, that's me. Thanks very much for having me on.
No problem. I think we got that collection, didn't we, at Attic Stories? And yeah, it's just, you seem like a really authentic writer, which I really enjoy. I think you can just tell you really take joy in the process of writing and kind of just sharing your words. And I think, yeah, that's just something that really resonated with me when I watched your performance. And I have to say, your performance stands out to me the most because I was blown away by the way you just entered the performance as well at Attic Stories. You kind of came on and you were talking to the audience. Then all of a sudden, I could just tell, right, we're in this now. Like you're actually performing a poem to us now, and I just remember just being blown away. So yeah, just as a little bit of a bit of ego boosting from the offset.
That's actually the lady, fantastic poet who hosted Attic Stories, Rose Kondo, who's a writer and published a couple of books with Flapjack Press. Years ago, and I think it was just post-COVID, I performed at a gig in Manchester and I'd never met Rose, and Rose came on and she performed like that. So if you've seen Rose's show, she sort of leads in with a story and then goes into it. And I don't often do that, but I wanted to do it as a bit of a sort of tribute to Rose on that night, because when she did it the first time, I was like, wow, sort of catches you off guard, doesn't it? Keeps you on your toes. And I think that's a lot of my, without wanting to sound too confrontational, that's sort of my style. Is I like to make people almost on the back foot, make them think about something, and that style of entering into a poem gets rid of all the wanky nonsense about introducing your poem and what you want it to mean, and just goes straight for the throat. Do you know what I mean? So.
Oh god, yeah. And I mean that just comes across so vividly in your words as well. And I think that leads on quite nicely to the next question. So you say that you started out in a punk band. What made you then turn to writing? How did you kind of start to create this collection that you put together?
Nobody was listening to the I mean, we did a bit for years. We gigged all over the show down in Dublin, at the Dublin Castle in London, but really it was never really. We were all too different, and everybody had different ideas and different opinions, and basically I thought that mine were always right and theirs were wrong. But then I always carried on writing, and I'd never really stopped that process, but I didn't have the outlet. And then I suppose it was born of frustration, really. And I also didn't really know that what I was doing was a thing. When you're not part of that, I hate using the word scene, but when you're not part of that group of people that perform and interact with each other and network, you don't really know what's going on. So then when I first went to a gig and performed at an open mic and realized, oh, this is a thing that people do, that became like an outlet to get involved in. So I'd never really stopped writing from being, 14, 15. But then when I first went to an open mic that was can I tell you a little bit about that? Just because it's...
Please do.
So I went to an open mic night in Prestwich, that I'd just seen off the cuff, and this was before COVID. I think it was probably 2019, and I didn't know what to expect. So I went and got a couple of pints and sat there nervously, and then when it was my turn to go up, I just went and recited a couple of poems, and then I went and sat down, and a poet who's now a really good friend of mine is called Rob Stevenson. He ran Punk in Drublic for years, raised thousands and thousands of pounds for Mustard Tree Homelessness Charity. And aside from that, he's an absolutely brilliant poet. He sent me a little note across the table, and the note just said, "You were brilliant. I'd love to have you on." And I didn't even know what he would, wanted to have me on at, but it was that, those little sort of gestures are really important to sort of give people the shot in the arm that, to keep on doing it. And I think that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to think somebody's the best poet ever, but just like a little bit of, and it doesn't have to be hollow praise either. You can give somebody feedback and give them things to work on, that sort of thing. But that being connected and giving each other feedback means that you've then got a sort of foundation to build on. And that definitely happened for me with that moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really cool thing that ties into the thing we did with Inkspill, where we had someone as our sacrificial poet last year for our Inkspill Slam at the festival. And it was just because I saw him at a night, I think it was something over in Bury, or it was outside Manchester basically. And I just met him and I was like, I haven't got any slots left, but I've got sacrificial poet, and he didn't even know what he was doing. And he's called Jack, and since then he's gone on to win 3 slams, and 3 quite significant slams, and I'm just in awe, because it's like the first moment just seeing someone who was just like a bit of gold dust, and I was like, and he was just up for anything, but just having someone like him, and I was like, please,
Jack Coverdale?
Yeah, he's fab.
Yeah, he beat me in the slam. That it was the one mic stand slam.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he's so good. He's really, really good.
And also just such a nice bloke as well. Like he's just an absolute he
seems like a nice lad, yeah.
He was at our slam last year, and I just seen him this last year, like completely go from like just good stuff. It's just been brilliant. So so very similar.
I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to ask something a little bit off the list, because I come from a musical background as well, slightly different. I come from being a folk musician, and that led me into writing poetry too. Kind of, how would you describe the difference between songwriting and writing poetry? What's the difference there, and what are your thoughts on that?
For me, how it starts, there isn't really a difference, because when I used to write songs, I would always have the melody first, and I would go to the band and I would sing it to them and almost tell them, this is how you should play a guitar. And I can't play a note of anything, but I'd literally say like, no, make this noise with the, do you know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly
quite frustrated, and they hated it because they'd be like, it doesn't make that sound. We'll get an instrument that can make that sound. and I think with poetry, because mine's quite, it's not beat poetry, but it's quite rhythmic, and I get into into the speed of things, and it changes all the time. And I think it's very, very similar in that I sort of write it like that, and I tend to find myself almost coming back to like a bit of it's not a chorus, but almost like it's like a familiar beat that reoccurs throughout the poem. So in terms of writing it, sometimes it comes, sometimes you have to work, try and get it a little bit harder. But I think for me, there's not that much difference, because I used to write the songs in isolation from the band anyway. So and sometimes the poems that they don't have to be a poem that you perform. A lot of the time I'll write something and it is a song, and I'll sing it into my note, not my notes, my voice recording. Like I've just looked now, and there's like 300 recordings, and some of them are horrible, but some of them you might come back to them in a couple of months and listen to it, and it might be like a little tune or something that sounds good that you can turn into something, or something that you just throw away. But I very, very rarely sit down, unless for a commission maybe, and go, right, today I'm going to write a poem. That just doesn't happen. So
sometimes kind of the words and the ideas dictate what it becomes, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I've genuinely don't sit down and go, right, let's write a poem. It's just, it comes from like a couple of lines that might come from a conversation, or that you might overhear, or that you might find in your notes from 3 years ago, and then you sort of build it from that.
Yeah, that's fab. Have you ever thought of adding like any sort of music to the back of your poetry? I don't know if that's something you've done.
A few people have asked me, and a few people have said that they'd like to put like soundscapes and stuff behind it, and I don't know. I don't really want to. I don't really feel like I've got that urge. Like what I'm doing at the minute, I just like doing it. It's not my career. It doesn't bring in a lot of money. Well, it doesn't bring in any money, but it's fun. And I think if I was doing something like that and almost trying to pursue something like that, it's sort of become something different. And I don't really know if I wanted to do that. And also I don't even know if it would work. What I'm doing at the moment works and I quite enjoy it. I wouldn't say, never say never, because I've got some very, very talented friends who are musicians, and, working with them would be an honour. But at the minute, no.
Yeah, totally fair enough. So going back to your collection, do you want to just quickly talk us through, you said sort of you want to have something that people will take away with you. Do you want to quickly talk about what's in your collection, and then we can sort of look at how you started how you sort of got your poems together that would form it?
Yeah, so 2022 was like a mad year. I was booked to perform at Glastonbury and the Edinburgh Fringe, and Kendall Calling, like all in the space of 3 or 4 months. And it was brilliant. Like, it was just fun. And this is what I'm saying about, I think I went into those events like, if this is all it ever is, then that's mint. It's like it's fun. There was no ambition. There was no ego. It was just, let's go and have fun and have a great time. And through those things, I made some really good connections, met some fantastic people, listened to some brilliant poets, which is, probably the most important thing inspiration wise. But after those gigs, people would come up to me and go, oh, where can I find your stuff? Have you got a book for sale? And I was like, I ain't got anything. Like, add me on. I only made an Instagram account because I got booked for Glastonbury, and they asked for what my Instagram handle was, and I didn't have one. So I just made one, and now I hate it because it's Culain Wood the poet, and it just looks like, all the poet are you? I think someone told me you can change them, so I might have to change that. But anyway, so then after those gigs, I had a gig booked with a mate's band at the Castle on Oldham Street, and I just had like a week that building up to it, and it was a sold out gig, and I thought, I'm going to make something. No publisher I've had a couple of publishers that I've spoken to, but it's never gone anywhere, and I just thought, well, what's the point waiting? Like, I don't want to go down the the journey of trying to self-publish it and pay for it through or Amazon, all that sort of stuff. So I just literally got it all out on the table, typed it up, cut it all out, and it was like, and I used to love doing that as a kid, like drawing little pictures, sticking them on. And so I just made like a hard copy of it that was like just folded bits of paper, glue all over it. Honestly, it was a sticky mess. And then I gave it to a printing company just that I know through work, and I said, can you make this a thing? Can you make this a book? And they did. It cost me like 50, 60 quid to get 100 or 200 printed. And then at that gig, I think I took 30, and I sold them all on that first night. Wow. Which was just a bit of I should have done this at Glastonbury. I could have paid for it, paid for my weekend. But it was never to be like, oh, here's my book. I've got a book. It was literally just so that I didn't feel like an idiot when people said, have you got anything I can have? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if people don't have a fiver or whatever it is, then I just give it to them, because I'd rather them go away with something that's, especially if they come and ask. That's the main thing. If they would like to have something, then that means a lot, because it obviously shows that something I've said has resonated, and it's great to be able to just for them to go home, and even if they take it home and they leave it on a bus or whatever, that's fine. It's just that it builds that connection.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like it resonates for you with the zine last year.
Yeah, we were the same when we did our first festival for Inkspo last year, and I very similar to you. When people come to Inkspo, they leave a lot of work behind. So I found a bit of a lost and found bag. I was like, this is beautiful work, and people have just left it on tables or under pint glasses. And so I scanned it all onto a computer, and I made a zine of the lost work of Inkspo. And I just thought it was amazing that people didn't see value in those words, and we sold quite a few copies of those, didn't we? And we very much were the same. We were just like, if you can't afford it, just take one, because we'd rather you read this amazing stuff. But no, I just love that entire kind of idea, really. I think that's brilliant. And I think we talk about this as well in the first season of the podcast. We were like, well, what do we define as success? And we both said, didn't we? I would see just holding something I've created in my hands as being successful, no matter how you got to that point. And yeah, I just think that's a brilliant idea.
Do you know the poet Kate Ireland? So Kate she's from Glasgow, and she's sort of based in Manchester. She's a friend of mine. I've done a lot of gigs with Kate. I've been to see Kate's gigs. She's brilliant, and she runs a night called Blether that's taking place in London and in Manchester. Now, in terms of that idea of cutting things out, sticking them together, bringing them together in almost like scrapbook style, the stuff that she produces with her like team of artists. Not team of artists, but like with her friends, I suppose, and then with contributions, is like I almost feel like, not jealous, but like that is what I would wish that I was able to create, because it's so beautiful. Like she had a book out quite recently, they've put a zine out, even everything. I mean, when I had nights on in Glossop a couple of years ago, she did the posters, like these eclectic scrapbook style, and for me that's like the gold standard in this way of doing it. Mine looks like a 12-year-old did it, and that's fine. Like that's sort of what I'm capable of. That's the extent of my skills. The stuff that she's produced with those contributions is like, it's next level beautiful. They're like pieces of art. And I think if I ever did publish something, but properly, then not properly, that sounds really disrespectful to my own thing, but you know what I mean? Like if I ever did publish something and it was printed up, I'd probably try and work with somebody like Kate to sort of capture what I'd like and what I think it should look like, because the stuff that they have produced is definitely that.
I love that. Translate what's in your head to the page.
Yeah.
Better than you could.
But because mine looks like I said, I should just put Culain age 35.
I love your collection. It's really interesting. When I read poetry, I often highlight it. I think you've got my copy at the minute.
Yes, I've nabbed it from you.
I don't think I've highlighted yours, just 'cause I quite liked how it was. It was really simple, and I think 'cause I've got ADHD, I didn't feel like overwhelmed by it. I felt like it just like really worked. So it's lovely.
It's a bit small, isn't it? Like the
little
words
bit small. You could definitely go a bit bigger next time.
Yeah. But it was fun to do it. It was literally a kitchen table job, cutting it all out, sticking it together. And in terms of the actual poems themselves inside it, I think there's 7. And I picked 7 because like my 3 main inspirations in life, they're not actually poets. Like one's David Attenborough, one's Joe Strummer, and then the third is Eric Cantona. And obviously Eric Cantona played for United, number 7 on. So for me, just 7 poems just suited that.
Oh, I love that.
And so like the eclectic, the sort of themes of each poem is like, it's so mad. Some of them are about, not mad in terms of nuts, but like I suppose the range. Some of them are about, oh no, the world's literally on its ass, we're all doomed. But then I'm also talking about how you can find happiness in, or hopefully try and find happiness in just like simple everyday stuff. So they sort of seem to contrast, but I don't really care. That's how it goes, isn't it, with writing?
Yeah, we do. We put so much pressure on ourselves, don't we, sometimes? And I think through putting that pressure on it, we force poems and we force collections into a mould that really they just don't want to fit. And we were talking about this as well, because you're creating a collection as part of the project that aligns this year. And we were kind of saying, well, what's the done thing? What's the, what do we aim for here? But in actual fact, just do what works for you. Yeah, do you know what? It's been a very free conversation. Let's all just throw caution to the wind, because we put ourselves under so much pressure, and we don't need to, do we, at the end of the day?
No.
Let the word speak for itself.
Sorry, I was going to ask, so if you got down to 7, did you have more before that? Did you choose, or did you write, were you like, I'm going to have 7 in this collection, you wrote for it?
Definitely. I suppose it could have been 20, 30, and I just picked 7. Partly because it looked good with the number of pages that I'd sort of put together. I think I'd run out of paper, so I might have had more if I'd have had more paper. But it just seemed to fit, and the number is a good number. I did a little bit of research where it was like, what should how many poems should a pamphlet have in and all that. But then I just thought,
talked about this.
I just thought, sod that. I'll just do what I want to do for it, and 7 worked. The length of the poems are quite long. Some of them are anyway. They're like. For me to perform them, it's like a 2-minute piece, but maybe for someone to read it, it could be 3-4 minutes long. And I wanted it to be a one sitting type thing. Like, you open it up and you read them all and you just take them all in. And maybe that's, some people think, oh, then you don't get to appreciate each one or understand each one. But again, it was made just so people had something to take away. And if they take anything away from it, then that's great. If they look at it once and they pass it on, then that's fine too. So yeah, it was. But it sounds like I'm trying to be like, over blasé about it. I'm not. I genuinely just did it because I needed something to give people. It took me, a little bit of time at the kitchen table, and it's been nice to have. I've had it two prints of 100, and I don't think I've got any. So there are 200 of them out in the world at the minute, which is great.
And what an amazing feeling that must be, just kind of knowing that there are people out there with your work in their hands.
Even if it's on the shelves, they might find it one day. So yeah, that's fine.
I wouldn't even mind, because in the past we've kind of done the same with CDs. I wouldn't mind coming across one of my CDs in a charity shop.
Yeah,
I'd be fine with that, because I just know it's kind of got out and about. But I mean, I think kind of this season, so the first season was very much about generating ideas when we're writing. This season we're talking about the editing process, and so I kind of have the question of, so you said you had quite a few poems that you could have potentially put into the collection. What made you choose the 7 that you did then, when you were kind of cherry picking those poems that were going to make the final cut? What was your decision-making process there?
I treated it as a set, and I sort of looked at it as like, how, you know, if I was going to perform some of my favourite poems now that have had the best impact so far, because I still am relatively new to doing it, but I was even newer then, and I was sort of coming off the high of the summer of festivals and all that sort of stuff, and I thought, what would be at the minute my best 20-25 minute set? And then I sort of wrote it down as if I would perform it. Even some of because there's little annotations and stuff that are in on each poem, and even some of those comments are some of the things that I might say before, or after one of the poems, like so it was almost like not a script, but like, yeah, I suppose a set list with a set list with pictures.
Yeah, that's fab. I love that idea. That's so interesting as well, because I think something we talk about quite a bit is the difference between like page and spoken poetry, and how you write for those different things. And I really like the idea that you just sat down and were like, if I was going to perform this, what would I perform? I think that's just really great.
Yeah, and it's got that idea. I love that kind of personal touch as well, kind of that connection with the reader too, kind of through making those little notes, those annotations in there. I think it's allowing the reader to see your process and kind of your kind of intent behind that poem. So I think that's brilliant. And just a really original idea as well. I just think just impressive.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So when it came down to it, how did you find editing your own work? Because I think I'm now notorious for hating any kind of editorial stuff. What did you find like the most difficult? What were the benefits? Just how do you
know it? It was an interesting one for me, because there was probably 3 or 4 of the poems that I'd never written down. Like, I had them written as little sections of notes in my phone, and some on scribbles of paper, but I'd never actually written the whole thing down and as one document. And then through a couple of years of performing them and just getting to know them by heart, I didn't have them. So I thought, right, well, I want to put that in the book, and not the book, in the poem, whatever you call it, the set list that's a book or whatever. And I wanted to put them in that, so I had to actually sit down on my laptop and write them out for the first time. And so when it came to editing them out, there were certain things like where, am I going to capitalize the lines? Am I going to add punctuation at the end of the lines? And so there's a little bit of that. But again, I didn't think too hard about it. I just did what felt right. And there's no real rhyme or reason through the book, through the pamphlet, because there are some where it might look like a traditional form poem where you've got, capitalized at the start of each line. And there's that sort of an even flow to it. You can sort of see, oh yeah, that's a poem. And then there are also some where there's sod or punctuation, and it's just written as I would shout it. Do you know what I mean? As I would say it.
Yeah.
And I think that when I've read, one of the things I like to do at gigs is I like to pick up books from other poets, and I like to pick up their collections. And we've got a big shelf at home where we keep them all. And like the thing that I like looking, as well as reading the poem and understanding what it's about, is looking at how they presented it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes there are some really, really original, beautiful ideas. And I'd like to think that what I did was like, let's just try and get a little bit like almost like a magpie, choose what they've got, reproduce some of it, change it a little bit. And like I said, there's no like one format. Each poem is sort of its own format that suits how it's performed. And I'd like to think that how it's written on the page reflects how I perform it. So yeah, when it came to editing it, I had to write them out sometimes for the first time, cut them down, edit them that way. But it was a quick process. I mean, there's only 7 poems, so it can't be that long anyway. But it was quite nice for me to see them when I'd only sort of heard them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a long-winded way of saying that yes, I edited them.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about structure, because we had Adrian beat Earle in the episode prior to you, and his collection 5000 Hertz has a lot of like really interesting like structuring and formatting, so I feel like maybe a collection you'd quite like to read, because it's really like it's nice on the eyes to look at. But yeah,
it's funny how, you know, because he really did prioritize kind of form and structure, didn't he?
He did,
to
yeah,
the point
massively.
where that kind of that almost dictated him. He kind of had the form in mind, and then he wrote to that form. And I think I'd find that slightly too restrictive. I think I am a little bit more kind of see where the words take me rather than where the form and structure take me. But yeah, people have different approaches, don't they? Which leads quite nice onto the next question. So what advice or kind of what tips and tricks would you give to somebody who's maybe been performing, such as yourself, and then thinks, right, I want to start putting together a collection now? What would you kind of suggest for them?
I'd say don't wait for somebody to ask you to do it. Like, you know, just put it together however you like. Write it, handwrite it, you know, write it out on your laptop, print it out, ask a printer to make you some sort of little book, find an artist to work with that's a mate or somebody, and, you know, commission an artist, pay them real money, you know, to do it.
Not just exposure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, work alongside somebody and really showcase, you know, a collaborative piece. That's a really good way of doing it. The other thing is don't be too precious about it. And I think and that's maybe one thing that I was guilty of. I was like, oh, do you know what? You know, maybe I'll save these and these ones will be in that. And I had an idea for the title of a bigger collection, and I thought, well, that'd be in that. Does that mean I can't put it in that in the future? And I think, well, you never know. I mean, and then literally 3 months after I did that thing, I nearly died anyway. I had a massive heart attack at the end of 2022.
I remember you saying, actually, in Attic Stories. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so it was you know, I could have saved all these poems for a bigger book, and then I would have just it anyway. So, you know, I think don't be too precious with it. Like, spend some time getting it out of your notes app. Have a look through your notes in your phone. Have a look, listen to your voice recordings, see what you've written in your notebook, and while you're doing that editing process, again, don't be too precious. Just write it down. Find a way to get it out there, and it's really, like I said, it makes a difference when you've got that piece of paper to share at the end of a gig. When people come and connect to you, that's great. You know, it's a great conversation starter. It's a great tool. It's a great way of people remembering you. Yeah. Don't wait for somebody to ask you, just do it. You know, great if somebody does ask you, like, take that opportunity, but, you know, don't wait for that.
I love that.
That's brilliant advice.
I think we're both notorious for waiting.
But waiting for what? I think that's it, isn't it? I mean, we've been doing Expo now for 2 years, and we've both always said, oh, I'd love to hold my own work in my own hands, but really, actually, what are we waiting for? Like, we can just do it ourselves. You are completely correct. Yeah.
Have a launch. You know, do you know what I mean? Like, invite your friends, invite your family, invite other poets, do a night, like a gig. It's for me, like, I was probably a year late in doing it, because I would have loved to have it at in the summer at the festivals and all that sort of stuff. But I was able to write about that in the thing, and so it was like there was an honest sort of intro in my collection where I say it's been a mad year, Glastonbury, Edinburgh Fringe, Kendal. I've decided to put this together, and the name of it is Call It What You Want, like, because it was literally, and that's why I'm struggling to say, is it a pamphlet, is it a book, like, because it is just some paper with some poems in that I've stuck together. And, you know, and now there's 200 of them floating about, so, you know, it cost me next to nothing, so it's definitely worth doing. I think it's not about having a goal beyond it, it's about doing the thing, and sort of not all that, like, be present stuff, like, you know, although that is very good advice, but it wouldn't come from me. But, you know, I just say, like, just see it for what it is, enjoy it while you're there, enjoy it while you're doing it, because you might not get another chance to do it. So or you might get another chance to do it, and if you do, then that's even better.
Can I just going to go back to it as well. It's, how did you get to go to Glastonbury? Because you didn't mention this in your intro either. You sort of just like, I write poems, but I'd forgotten that.
So it's they every year the Poetry Tent, which is poetry and words, and it's based within the theatre and circus fields. It's coordinated by a woman called Helen Johnson. Somebody that I work with is called Helen Wilson, or that I work for. Helen Johnson. Helen Wilson is also lovely, by the way, but she's got nothing to do with poetry at Glastonbury. Helen Johnson is the curator of that stage at Glastonbury. She's just a lovely woman, a force as well. Like, you know, she's she lectures on poetry. She pulls together stuff. She's just a top all round person. And they put out a call that anybody can apply. Literally anybody can apply. And you know, I'd never done it before, and I'd actually forgotten that I'd applied, sent in a couple of videos. And then when that email came in March 2022, like, you know, are you still interested in performing at Poetry and Words and Gospel? I was like, you know, it was one of them, like, and and it was brilliant, and it was really good fun. Met some fantastic people, but it's sort of I don't want to say happened by accident, because I actually, you know, I applied, but I think sometimes it gets and I'll just stick up for it a little bit here. Sometimes it gets a bit of you know, sometimes when they advertise it on Facebook, you'll see people underneath commenting like, oh, this is a fix, you know, it's the same people every year, all that sort of stuff. And having been there and having seen how they operate, it's like, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's run by people that are really dedicated, that really believe in where poetry sits in a massive contemporary arts festival like that. You know, they champion it, and the diversity was broad. You know, people were represented from all walks of life. Like, you know, it wasn't as, you know, as some people sort of talk about it. It wasn't just like middle-aged white men. I mean, I'm a white man, but I'm not middle-aged yet. But like, you know, it was brilliant. And I think sometimes there's and it's not just Glastonbury either. It's other gigs, other sort of scenes and stuff, you know, where there's a bit of negativity towards it, and there's people that sort of slag it off or say, oh, it's always this, it's always the same people. And it's like, well, if that's the case, then do your own night, you know what I mean? Like, let's do your own night, prove somebody wrong, rather than moaning about it and slagging off the people that are putting in the hours and putting in the effort. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry about that, but it wound me up, because there were actually publishers based in. Now I won't go into too much detail, but there was, you know, that were slagging it off. Basically, they'd never been, and they were saying, "Oh, everybody I know said this. Everybody I know that was there said this." And I'm like, well, there can't have been that many people, because everybody that was there I spoke to, and they didn't say that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, you know, if people are spreading misinformation and lies about stuff like that, then, you know, I was actually there. And it's, you know, and it wasn't like I wasn't like, you know, walking backstage with the celebrities, you know, I was still, you know, using the Glastonbury toilets and all that sort of stuff. But it was, you know, it's not like you get paid a fortune to do it. You know, you get paid a little bit of money that, I mean, it doesn't even really cover your travel expenses, but that's not the point. You know, if you can afford, if you're lucky enough to be in a position where you can afford to do that, you can afford to take some time out of work and away from life to go and do it, because I realized that is a privilege to have been able to accept it. And you give it a go, apply for it. You might not get it, apply for a different festival, you might get that. Start your own festival, then you can, you know, then you can be the main poet headliner.
That's what
But I don't know, I felt like I got on my soapbox a little bit then, but I loved the opportunity. I loved the opportunity of Kendall calling as well. Again, Rob Stevenson, Punkin Drublick, he put that together, worked his backside off for that. He worked his backside off for poetry and for poets in and around Manchester. You know, top lad, top poet. Broke his back for poets, broke his back for homelessness charity in Manchester, without like wanting the spotlight and wanting the praise. You know, and getting to do things with him and with other poets. You know, people like that deserve credit, they deserve a pat on the back, and I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah,
you had a good time.
It was great.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. It's been really lovely. Would you like to ask the last question, Hannah? It's your favourite.
Well, yeah, we have. We've come to the last question of the list. So again, just thank you so much for joining us today. We like to end with a big one. So what's your favourite book, Culain? We just like to kind of share this with all our listeners.
I suppose it's Call It What You Want by Culain Wood. No, it's not it. Do you know what? I feel a bit guilty here, because I saw this question, you know, in the notes beforehand, and I thought, like, I don't, because I'm not a big reader, and one of those things is I'm quite busy. I've got 2 little girls. You know, it sounds like an excuse. Two dogs, just moved into a new house. Like, it's the you know, the world is busy, isn't it? And I don't find that much time to read, which sounds awful for a writer when everybody says, oh, read. But of all the books that I suppose stick in my head, it's reading at bedtime to the girls, and I would say that the Gruffalo and the Gruffalo's Child, even though they're very, very mainstream, they're like, if someone say a kid's book, most people would probably say the Gruffalo, but the way that they're written with the, aside from just being good stories and having great characters in, the actual skill of the cadence and the tempo and the beat, in all of in not just those two books, but in all of Julia Donaldson's books. I think because she's become, it's such a huge, I don't know, not collection, but like she's a huge author, isn't she? And her books she could write about a worm falling down a hole, and it would be, it'd be a Christmas special. Julia Donaldson, if she sees this and she takes that, then I want crediting. Like, the way that she writes about them is great. The stories are great, but actually the poetry, because they're poems, stands up, in my opinion, to any children's book or even some adults books. I mean, I love it. I recite the Gruffalo's Child to myself sometimes, if it just feels relevant. The Gruffalo's Child, Room on the Broom, they're poems, and and I think some people think it's a bit cringy, a bit cheesy, it's a bit mainstream or whatever. But for me, because those are the ones that, obviously not just those, but when I read to my girls, that they're having that sort of beat and rhythm. I can't read my poems to my kids. The content of them makes them a little bit off limit for now. But so I love having that rhythmic book to be able to read to them. So those, and I think they deserve higher praise than, it's just a great kids book. Do you know what I mean?
Oh God, yeah. Well, that's where it all comes from, isn't it? Childhood, and we grow up with these iconic books that form us. It's the earliest stage of character building, isn't it? Through what we read in those early stages. So absolutely valid.
Yeah. So if I was going to pick one, I'd say the Gruffalo.
Super.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a different answer as well. I really appreciate that, because I think, children's literature often gets a bit shafted, and it's quite nice to hear someone respect it. So good choices.
Nice one.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Culain. It's been lovely chatting, and we'll be sure to share various bits of your work on our socials so people can keep up with you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was all right. No, it was fab.
He was just really down to earth, and I love people like that. Because I think Culain kind of picked up on it a little bit. In this world, unfortunately, in this industry, you do get people who do have quite an ego and can sometimes be not very nice.
Not very nice.
And as much as we've kind of tried to, we have met so many brilliant people through poetry, there have been people who have knocked my confidence a bit that I've kind of been associated with, and so it's really nice to just speak to someone who's really down to earth but has been really successful
my God.
as well.
I just when he introduced himself and we were like looking at each other and we were both like, you haven't mentioned Glastonbury.
Oh, you haven't mentioned half the things calling. That you've done,
Why are you not mentioning this? And then I think there was a minor panic of like, have we got ourselves confused? And then later on he just brought it up and I was just like, Culain, that's really cool. Like, why have we not? Did you not mention that in your introduction? Because he's had such wonderful success in that. I just think he's so deserving of it, which is so nice, and it makes it easy to enjoy and appreciate with him.
He absolutely does, and I think as well, I just love Culain's just entire approach to poetry. He's very much a self-made kind of authentic kind of poet, isn't he? And as reflected by his collection that he's put together, and I thought that was really refreshing to hear someone who's just thought, do you know what, I want to have something that I can give out to people. I want it to be pretty low stakes, low cost. I'm just going to piece it together myself. I thought it was brilliant. I
liked his line of just like, it's just about them asking for it. It's not about whether they can pay for it. And I just like, that's so like beautiful, and so like encapsulates him as a writer to me, that it's just like, if someone asks for it, they can have it. Like, obviously it's good to pay, like we do like paying artists, but like it's good to have that approach of just like, here, take this writing with you.
I love that he came from a music background as well. I didn't know that about him.
I didn't know that either.
It was really interesting to kind of hear some of the similarities of our experiences of going from predominantly music and song-based work to then going into poetry.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a really, really lovely conversation and really heartwarming as well. It just, obviously, he's got so much love for his family and his daughters, and he's been through a lot as well. I mean, he didn't really mention it much, but he did talk to us at Attic Stories about the fact that he obviously had quite a serious heart attack, didn't he? And I imagine it would just put things into perspective for you. And yeah, just really, really just impressed by what an impressive guy.
Yeah, like I say, the caliber just stays the same because we have wonderful people on here, and it's nice to share the space with them and platform them in our own small way, because like we really value and respect our community and the people who have uplifted us and engaged with us, and it's just wonderful. So yeah, just fantastic to talk to someone just so good.
Yeah. As an understatement.
yeah, but you know, I mean, good in like a holistic, good as a writer, good as a person, like that wonderful combo of stuff.
And the Gruffalo as the book choice was genius. I'm sorry it was, because like a lot of our inspiration comes from our childhood and our first encounter of literature, and so like you were saying, so much of children's literature doesn't get the appreciation and that it deserves, and it's genius. A lot of it is genius.
It is, because like for me, I'm dyslexic. I used to hate reading. Like literally, my parents used to physically hold me at the table to like read my book at school. I hated it so much. And my dad used to read books at bedtime to me, and he was really regular on that. And he read like Paddington books and like Swallows and Amazons and like I think we did a few of the Narnia ones, but obviously I was falling asleep, so I can't remember. But like it just first of all, the time that my dad took with me on that was really, really special. Like I really appreciate that, and it was always really nice. And he always read a full chapter, and I wanted to hear more, and so I understood like story much more than like reading, which was really kind. But yeah, like all of that sort of style. But like I reread Swallows and Amazons recently, and was just like, oh, it's just such fun. Like it's such like a really yompy, like if it's in the least like nationalist racist way, that to me is like proper British literature. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's what it means. It's like kids messing around in lakes and sailing boats, having picnics. Like that's what I want it to be. So yeah, it's just him just shouting about the Gruffalo and just being like, I mean, the reason they've gone on to like have stage shows and cartoons and get books and
huge successes
because they're just so timeless. They're wonderful.
They are.
So yeah, love that for him, love that for us. It was nice.
It was brilliant. A really, really fantastic season, and the guests have just been brilliant. Obviously we have got our final episode coming next week.
We keep saying it, but like it's because we finished with the guests that we feel
it feels a bit final, doesn't it? And you know, last season it really would be the last episode, but we are going to round up next week. What are we taking from our conversation with Culain then? What are we thinking about the week ahead?
Yeah, so we didn't really highlight it in much during our interview. We haven't really mentioned it ourselves, but this is supposed to be the episode focusing on mental health and writing for mental health. And I think it's time to take a break from our work. We've set a lot of editing this season. I think also, like, maybe something we should highlight is if you listen to the season and one style of editing really doesn't work for you, but another does, you don't have to do all of them. Like, we are kind of feeling out for ourselves. Because you edit more than I do, but we don't edit much, and it's offering lots of different ways to edit and not necessarily having to do all of the edits,
and kind of cherry picking the advice you're going to take, the things that are going to work for you,
tailoring it to you, definitely making it personal. But I think this is the time, because next week we'll offer the sort of work to do between seasons, which obviously a bit bigger and a bit more significant. So maybe this is for me, I think this is the time to take a break. I think this is time to like step back from this creative project and maybe do something, make something fresh. You were saying you really liked the way he made his self-published collection.
I thought it was brilliant. I mean, I have been waiting, very similar to what Culain said there, for the right moment, for the right publisher to come along, and in actual fact maybe it just won't. Maybe I'm not going to just get picked out of a crowd like they do in the films and be like, oh, you're going to be a star.
It'd be nice though, wouldn't it? Let's be honest.
God, it would be nice, but I've been watching too many Hallmark movies, and I need to actually instead make it happen myself. And it doesn't need to be an expensive thing, does it? He literally sat down at a kitchen table, printed out the poems he wanted to feature in his collection, and created his own book. And in actual fact, it is that easy, isn't it? And if you're not doing it for money, if you can just at least cover your costs by just charging £1 or £2 for your booklet, I think that's that's the way to go, isn't it? Just for getting your name out there.
Yep.
Again, it goes back to season 1. How do you define success? And we said having something physically ours that we can hold in our hands, that we can give out to people, and that people can have on their bookshelves. And so perhaps for me, it might be, because I write some short stories as well, so maybe I will get some short stories put into a little pamphlet, or maybe I will cherry pick 7 of my favourite poems and get that into a pamphlet. But I think this week I'm going to really look at doing that, because I have nothing physically in the world that is just mine. I've always been in anthologies or collections. I'd like something that's just me, my name, that I can just give out to people at Spill, or kind of when I'm at open mics and events.
No, absolutely. So I think the line for this week is step back from your creative project, shelve it, allow yourself to just pop it away for a bit and stop because I mean we fixate on hours. Like, even though we're busy, I read it before bed the other night and I was just like, I need to stop doing this. So maybe like poets, do some free writing, use some of the stuff from week 1, just have a fun time playing with stuff, and try and make a short collection, like literally a pamphlet of like 7 poems, like maximum. Writers, like novelists, go and do like a short story, or even flash fiction. I think flash fiction is like 500 words.
Yeah.
So really like nail down on that. And just like have fun, just play around, just write for yourself for a little bit. If you're doing a play, which I don't know if we haven't, I'm sorry, doing a play, but if you were doing a play, do a monologue, do a short scene, just do something really tiny.
Release like the first act or something if you want. If you want, kind of split it into sections, and maybe to do a little pamphlet or booklet of the sections of the piece that you're working on.
Or contact some probably like acting students and see if they would read it for you and record it and hear how it sounds in someone's, I was going to say mouth, but that feels... I do this occasionally. I give really like intimate lines. Like how it sounds coming out of someone's voice and acting.
This is getting worse, I feel.
Yeah, leave it alone.
No, I know what you mean though. As someone else kind of vocalising and verbalising your words.
See where they break you up and what stage directions they add that you hadn't considered.
Yeah, very true. But yeah, that seems like quite a nice manageable one. And I think actually taking our minds off of the mountainous task that is the creative project might be a good idea.
Yeah, let it ferment a bit.
Yeah, because we're going to have that time, aren't we? Obviously, we're starting to come to the end of season 2 now. We will have that gap, won't we, before we start season 3?
Yep.
So that's our opportunity to kind of stop, reflect, before we get on to the performance.
How mad is that?
I know, performance and publishing
Sharing season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope that's clear. That's clear?
I think so, yeah. Have a break and think about maybe putting something out there into the world that's a little bit shorter and helps you to feel a success sooner.
Yes. Sounds good to me.
So next week it will just be Abbi and I.
That'll just be the 2 of us.
We'll be chinwagging about the season and what's to come. And yeah, just kind of discussing our projects thus far and
setting people up for the break.
Yeah, a little bit. So just kind of rounding up episode. But thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Culain, as well, for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, it's been a treat.
It's been really good. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been a really blooming good season, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it, like, it's just been great. We just have had a great time. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.